Hi, my name's Vanessa, and today my dad's teaching me how to do basic maintenance on my car. Today he's going to be teaching me how to do spark plugs and O2 sensors.
So the vehicle we're working on is an E46 produced between 1997 and 2006. Vanessa does 90% of the work with some guidance from me as we go through this repair. We're going to take these two plastic covers off. So what we're going to do next, you have to take the bolt, take the oil cap off. And this cover will come up and slide off like this, and this cover will come straight up. All right. So one of the reasons why I'm teaching her this is so she knows what's going on with her car. So in the future, if she takes it into a repair shop and they're explaining something to her, she knows what's going on. She knows how to do some of this stuff herself, and that way she won't be taken advantage of. Trust me, it wasn't a hard thing to get her to come out here and do her own maintenance on her vehicle. She's a car nut. She went ahead and bought all the parts and approached me, said, "Dad, my car's due for this service. Can you help me out with this and teach me what to do and show me what to do?" So what she's doing right now is disconnecting the ignition coil. So she's pulling up on the little metal tabs here with a flat blade screwdriver, sliding them up, and then pulling the wire connector out of the coil packs. Once she gets all the electrical connectors removed, then she's going to unbolt them. There's two 10mm bolts holding these ignition coils down, so she's going to remove all the 10mm bolts. So now she's ready to remove the ignition coils. After that, she'll get a 5/8 spark plug socket, a little extension, and a ratchet, and she's going to remove the spark plugs. Yeah. And the same thing, you can loosen, yeah. This one might be a little tougher. So center it and use that. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, just push with your elbow, push. Draw it back to a bit more comfortable position, wherever you gotta do. You gotta put some elbow behind it, some ass behind it.
No!
There you go. Now you can move to the next one.
Ooh. Ow, I hit my elbow on this.
Yeah, that's a daily thing. That's why I gave you a longer extension. If we were at the shop, I would have gave her a much longer ratchet, making this a much easier task. But we're doing this at home in the driveway, and we have minimal tools here at the house. We have just enough tools to do the job, but not the ones to make life easier. So I had her remove all 6 spark plugs. After that, we went ahead and started putting in the new spark plugs. I wanted to point out that the spark plugs on this vehicle have multi-electrodes, so you cannot gap the spark plugs. They're pre-gapped and preset from the factory. You just want to look at those and make sure there's nothing damaged. If there is, swap them out. So we're using NGK spark plugs. They do not recommend using anti-seize on these spark plugs. They already come with a coating on the threads that are designed to help ground the spark plug better. So if you put an anti-seize on these particular brands, it can interfere with that grounding of the spark plug and cause misfires.
So this has an aluminum washer right here. And so we're just going to tighten this by hand. I would recommend tightening it with a torque wrench to about 14 foot-pounds. But because we don't have one, we're just going to do it by hand. And you're going to tighten it until you feel this crushed.
So I had her thread all the spark plugs by hand and then tighten them down until they were snug. And once she felt them bottom out and snug, I had her tighten it about a quarter turn more, which will get you in the ballpark of around 14 foot-pounds of torque. That's what the recommended torque spec is for these. If you have a torque wrench, go ahead and do that. Then I just went back over it and just double checked because I have a feel for it. So when you're working on vehicles that have aluminum heads in the steel spark plugs, it's not recommended using impact tools to remove or install those. You can damage the threads very easily on the cylinder head. So it's best to do this all by hand. It's kind of a slow process, but it's the safest way to do it. Now, after installing all 6 of the spark plugs, she's able to reinstall the ignition coils. So she's going to drop those down into place and then start all of the fasteners. And on this one, you pull the little metal tab on the end of the coil upwards, slide the electrical connector on, and then press the metal tab down to lock the connector onto the coil. On the first coil and the last coil on the run here are a little ground cable that you need to install on the bolts. Make sure you don't forget that. So you'll install all the fasteners, and then you'll run them down until they're snug and then about a quarter turn more. So I'm having her start and run all these fasteners down by hand, so it's faster to take the ratchet off and then run it down with just the extension with your fingers, twisting it on until they're fully snug, and then put the ratchet back on and run them down and tighten them up. So at this point, you would be done with the tune-up. You would just put the covers back on, but we're going to do the oxygen sensors. It's recommended at a certain mileage on this vehicle. So she went ahead and got those sensors, and we're going to replace those next. So before we put the covers back on, we're going to do the oxygen sensors. So what she's going to do here right now is the upstream, so it's split in two banks. So she's going to unplug the first oxygen sensor here. It's a short wire. And when she unplugs it, she's doing it by the plastic portion, not by the wires. That way you don't pull the wires out of the connectors. So the oxygen sensors are right below the air pump here. If your model has an air pump, not all of them have it. So you're going to unplug both of these connectors. After that, I recommend that you spray the oxygen sensors with a little bit of penetrating oil. Oxygen sensors are notorious for freezing up in the head, so this will help remove them, make removal a lot easier. So I had her install the oxygen sensor socket. It's a socket that has a slit in the middle, so the wire will fit over it. You slide it onto the oxygen sensor. Then she put the extension on it and then cracked it free. Yeah. And once she was able to crack it free, then she should be able to spin it out. I also had her hold on to the wire as she's loosening up the sensor and spin it out.
All right. Some of these come with anti-seize already put onto the threads. You want to make sure it's not on the actual sensor. Just depends on where you get your parts. This one already has it on there, so we're good to go.
And use your other hand to twist the wire and guide the wire righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we're tightening. Oxygen sensors are similar to a spark plug where they have a crush washer. So you're going to run it down till it's snug, and then about a quarter turn where you can feel that washer crush down. Now you can go ahead and plug that sensor back in, and then now we're going to move on to the back one here. Vanessa had already removed it. I'm just double checking the tightness of the new sensors here. So you're just going to spin them out, spin them back in, and plug them back in. It's pretty simple. They're straight up and down. I'm using a 3/8 drive ratchet here. Nothing special other than the oxygen sensor socket. Now both of the oxygen sensors are installed. We need to just plug them in and then tuck the wires back into the little catch. After that, I recommend you fire the engine off, and we're going to check for misfires and make sure that everything's running good before we put the engine covers on. Now that we know the car is running good, we're going to go ahead and put the engine covers back on. Also, if you notice that there was a lot of smoke, that's the penetrating oil burning off that we sprayed on there. That's normal. So now we're going to go ahead and install the covers in the reverse of where we took them off. So I had her install the cover that went over the valve cover and coils first, and then you put the line it up with the bolt holes, drop it down, then you can put the oil cap back on. And then once you got that done, you start the bolts by hand and then run them in until they're snug, and then you can put the intake version of the cover on. She was having trouble getting the bolt started, so what I had her do is take a piece of paper, put it around the bolt, stuff it into the socket, and then when she turned the socket up, right side up, the bolt will stay in the socket and won't fall out. Now it's easy for her to thread the bolt into the cover here. After starting all the bolts, I had her run them in and to snug them up. Then she reinstalled the covers here, so just pop them on. She bought this vehicle, a new engine was installed, and the cowling tray here was in the trunk right here. This houses the cabin air filter. So I went ahead and put that back into place. Now, the 4 fasteners that mounted it on here were missing already. So I went ahead and just go ahead and put it on there. We're going to go find some fasteners for that. We don't have a cabin air filter for it either, so we're going to go ahead and put this little piece on here and just held on with some spring clips. A couple push tabs and turn 90 degrees. That locks the top cover in place. And then on top of the valve cover are the 2 cables going across. One's a battery cable and one's the wiring harness for the coils and injectors here. So we're just going to clip that back into place. Part of the covers are missing here, so we're going to head to the salvage yard and see if we can find those type of parts for this vehicle and make it a much more complete vehicle. I'm Vanessa from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.